So when you think about a typical classroom when you were a child, you have the teacher up in front of the room, the students sitting at their desks or standing and listening to what the teacher's saying. I was the main event. Back 2-3 years ago, I was up on the top of the stage, and I was the one that was important. The kids were the ones that would sit there and listen to me. Teachers teach and students learn, and that's how it was, and I'm sure many of you remember that from your years in education. But realizing now that there needs to be a shift, and that students are changing, people are changing, life is changing, and we can't quite use that same methodology of teaching anymore. So we need to start thinking about what kinds of changes that we can make. So one of the first things that I started working on is giving up control in the classroom. And for any of you that might know me, it's really not easy for me to give up that kind of control. I like to be in charge of things. I like things to go the way I want them to go. And if any of you are teachers, I'm sure you understand what that's like. And the whole concept of if you want something done right, do it yourself, knowing that students and other people can't quite do what you want to do in the vision that you have for certain assignments and projects, isn't always quite the way it comes out when you have somebody else do it. But I started to think about the fact that I can't be the one responsible for doing everything anymore. And with Jen helping me through coaching, she kept asking me the same question over and over again. Who's doing the majority of learning in the classroom, or the majority of work in the classroom? And it was me. I was the one that would get there in the morning, I would teach all day, I would give all the kids the information that they needed, I would go home at night, I would do multiple hours of work, and the kids would come in and they'd learn while they were in the class, and then they'd leave and maybe they would, or maybe they wouldn't do their homework that evening. But for the most part, I was the one doing all the work. So I started to think about some ways, and Jen and I discussed different methods that I could use to try and give up some of that control and think about ways that I could shift that focus from me to the students and allow them to start taking over more control. So one of the things, and this was the easiest one to start with, was instead of me standing up in front of the room after the students completed a homework assignment, I'd let them run the review. Students would have the opportunity to carry the teacher's manual and review the assignment with the class. And in doing so, I was able to facilitate through the classroom to make sure that the students were getting the correct answers if they had mistakes, work with individual students one-on-one to find out if they understood, if they made mistakes, or why certain answers were the way they were. And in order to do this easily and fairly and to get everybody involved, we created popsicle sticks for the classroom, and some of you may do that. It's something I really strongly recommend, and I encourage all of you to, no matter what level of student that you teach and what age group. Every year at the beginning of the year, students will write their name on a popsicle stick and we'll put it in a cup, and that'll sit somewhere in the classroom that identifies that it's for that class. And as a student, the student as the teacher will come up and they will have the teacher manual and they will just select popsicle sticks, name by name. And that student that they call on will be the one that's going to be giving the answers to the questions. So it makes it easy for the students to kind of run that activity without worrying about nobody raising their hands, because as teachers, I know sometimes for us it's frustrating too when you ask a question to a group and nobody responds. So this way, every child is forced to participate and every child is forced to be part of that review.
I'm going to jump in for a minute. You know, different teachers like different tools for doing this. You have something that's with the Smartboard notebook, and they have that game where you can put the names in and it automatically selects them. There's lots of different tools out there, but it's not about using technologies. It's about that shift in your classroom. It's not about becoming this technology teacher. It's about going from content deliverer to context facilitator and starting to get kids to understand that they're kind of in charge of all these different tools, and I need to find out the one that's going to work best for me. Because we learned, we've got a dictionary, an encyclopedia, a thesaurus, and we learned how to use them. There weren't a whole lot of tools for us. But now there are an infinite number of tools, and they keep changing all the time.
And along with that, using different resources and different tools, I also started asking my students to find tools to use for the classroom. I said, okay, instead of me spending an hour each night on YouTube trying to find a video that would highlight this topic that I'm going to discuss, I gave the students that assignment. Find the best video that you can find on conjugating AR verbs. And they'd all get together, they'd share the videos with each other and decide which one they liked the best. They would send it to me, and that would be the one we'd showcase in the class. So instead of me doing all the background legwork, the students started to do that. They would bring review ideas to me. They would bring review games to me. In fact, a number of them started creating their own review games, their own review videos. Whether they were going to earn extra credit or not, they did it because they knew I'd use it in the class, and they knew how they best learn, and that they would be helping other students learn as well. One of the other things I have the students do is when they come up with answer keys for different things, for assignments, they go on my website, they post their answer keys. I choose one that looks the best, of course, and the easiest to read. They'll post their answer keys on my website, so the other students will have the opportunity to go back and check their work and to review it as needed if they want. In all of this comes the concept of the fact that, and as Jen mentioned, I'm not really teaching my content area. Yes, I'm a Spanish teacher, and I help the students to understand and speak Spanish better, but I'm not just teaching the Spanish. The content and things like that, students can learn on their own, but putting the content into context in the classroom is where we want to spend the majority of our time. So I'm teaching skills, I'm teaching different ways that these students can respond to information, locate information, find information, and then actually utilize the information. So I found this image and I really liked it, and it was kind of reflecting back on what I said earlier about how teachers teach and students learn. Well, what I've learned over the years is that teachers teach and teachers learn, and students learn and students teach. And it's all connected, and there's not an end to education. Just because you become a teacher and you have a group of students doesn't make that the end of your education as a person. Education for everybody and learning is something that's ongoing through our lives, and in one of the sessions I was at yesterday, there was a student, a high school student, who was presenting with another presenter here, and he said something that really stood out to me. He said, "We can teach you," meaning students can teach teachers, "as much as you can teach us." And that was something that also reminded me about that angst that I had about giving up the control, because I feel like, well, I'm the one responsible. I'm the one that needs to be giving you all this information and providing you with what you need to be successful. But I have to step back and remember that some of these kids know more than I do, especially with technology. You put a device in their hand and they can usually figure out something way quicker than any of you could figure it out, or any of us could figure that out. And I have to remember that the majority of the students already know a lot of this stuff and accept that. So instead of me spending time learning the tools, I mention tools, I suggest things, and the students say, "Can you show me how to use it?" I said, "I can't, but find somebody in the class that can." One of our technology teachers in our building actually put together a bulletin board, and he had the students decide which tools they're best at, and they become the tech mentors for the school. So there's a list of names under each different technology tool that we might use in the school. Students know who to go to so they can actually teach each other, which makes it really, really helpful, especially so we're not taking time out of our classroom to have to teach the tools.
Kids go to me. It's almost, if it was an elementary classroom, I might have the hats. They're like, yeah, this is my job, that's my job. And that's just such a great feeling. So when I think about teachers in elementary classroom and they have the tools on the jobs on the board, like the tree with all the different things up there, you know, this might look a little different than that, and it might change all the time. We might have someone Skyping in the back, you know, and now they find someone who's going to be the expert. So it's starting to find those people that'll help us get the information we need. You know, Alyssa touched on this about this whole idea that we're not just teaching the content anymore, because these kids can pick up their phone and grab it anytime they want. They can find the information. It's about, how do I know it's valid? How do I know what I'm finding is reliable? You know, how do I know which tool to express what I want other people to understand about how I feel? And so my thing is, I kind of look at it as, you know, kids all have their own kitchen now, and they're chef, and we're just helping them figure out what tools they want to use and how they like to cook. You know, how do I look to cook best? So there's all these different knives, and there's all these different whisks and different things they could use, and you're trying to help them, okay, there's a lot of them. Which one are you going to like best, and how are you going to use it?
So in order to continue giving up this control, one of the concerns that most teachers would have about stepping back is, how are the students going to remain engaged and interested in what they're supposed to be learning? If I'm not standing in front of the room and making sure that all of my students have my attention at all times, how am I going to know that what they're doing on their own without me standing there and monitoring everything, that they're going to stay engaged? So I had to also start thinking about the kind of assignments that I give my students and making sure that there's value in their work. In the past, and again, think about when you were a child in school, the homework assignments that you were typically given, it was busy work. You would get worksheets and handouts and things like that, and sometimes the teacher would check the work, sometimes they wouldn't. So I started thinking about, what kinds of assignments can I give the students that they're going to have value in, that's going to give purpose, that they have purpose in the work that they're doing. And something really stood out. One of the students said to me one day, "Well, are you going to check this? Does it count?" And I thought about that, and I said, well, of course it does. Everything counts. Well, are you going to grade it? And I realized that I cannot continue to give assignments that I'm not going to at least look at. Students don't care whether there's an actual grade on a piece of paper, but if they turn in work to me and I put a check mark or some kind of note that they see that I actually recognize they did the work, they're happy with that. So whether you're going to take the time to grade everything or just mark off that you've seen it, that they've done it, it means a heck of a lot more to them, and they're going to be more likely to do the work in the future.
That was one of the first things I started when I started working with the teachers, is talking about, I call it PAC, P for purpose. You have to have purpose in everything you give them, and they have to see the purpose. And if they don't, they're not going to do it. So if you're never checking homework, they're going to stop caring about it and stop doing it. And then the A would be audience. When we give kids an audience, we see engagement go up. Even if it's, when they took over homework review and they came up to the front of the room, we gave them an audience. When they Skyped with another class, and we had 2 PE teachers at the middle school and the elementary school, and they were learning about different drugs, different tobaccos, and things like that, and they shared their presentations with each other, Skyped and taught the other class. Really simple, something they could do easily. So when we do that, that really increases engagement. The second A is autonomy. It's a little bit easier, obviously, to put into place in the older grades, but giving them some options. And the last is the C is choice. So when people tell me, okay, well, we're going to do a slide rocket project, or we're going to do a Prezi project, I cringe because we don't ever say we're going to do a paper pencil project. And it's that idea that it's not about the tool, it's about thinking about what do you want the kids to get out of it, what are you trying to teach them, what's your true intention and objective. And so I always tell teachers that, is what are you starting with, why do you even want to use this, what is about this tool, do you just think it's cool? Are you nervous because you've got all these other teachers learning different things? Don't worry about what they're doing, worry about what you're doing, what feels comfortable. So again, coming back to that pack would be the first way that I start, is the purpose, audience, autonomy, and choice. And when you put that into as many assignments as you can, you really do see the engagement go up.
And choice, for me, by allowing the students to have that option, has increased their motivation, has increased their involvement in the class. I do an assignment when I'm teaching basic readings and introductions in Spanish, and the students create a comic strip between 2 or 3 people or characters that are meeting for the first time to kind of just practice basic vocabulary regarding greetings and introductions. So they would all get a big piece of poster paper and they divide it into sections, and whether they could draw or not, they could print pictures and they'd make their comic strip linear on a piece of poster board. About 2 years ago, speaking with Jen, speaking with my principal, I started to think, well, what if some of them don't want to do it that way? How about I give them this option? How about I tell them to do it this way? And I said, well, I don't want to tell them what to do. So I decided now, my project now is, we're going to do a comic strip. You're going to highlight 2 characters meeting for the first time using vocabulary that we've been learning. However you want to put that together, you can do that. So I have students making Prezis, I have students using Vokies that are talking to each other. They do presentations, they do smart notebooks. Some of them still do the traditional poster paper because they like that. Students have come up with programs and technology tools that I didn't know existed. There's online creation for comic strips that they can do, and they can put their own voices in. So what I started doing was, as the students were saying, well, can I use this, can I use that? I would ask, do you know how to use it? Yes, then go ahead. Then I suggested to my other classes, oh, well, this class is using this program. Go animate. It's great. Well, can you teach me how to use it? No, but that person over there can. So the fact that they had those options, they were so much more engaged in the projects and assignments that they were doing because they felt that they could take ownership of it. And I realized that that was where more of the learning was even taking place, was that they were able to say, hey, this is going to work for me, so I'm going to do it this way. In the end, the grades were based on the same rubric. And I didn't use technology as part of the rubric. It was, did they meet the requirements? Did their pronunciation stand out as being effective? Did they work well together? In the end, it wasn't about whatever tool that they chose to use, it was about the end result of the project.